Laskin Corla. Can I first congratulate Deputy Ring for his elevation to his current post. I've always thought of him as one of the most distinctive and indeed compelling voices in the Dáil, Laskin Corla. As you know, Laskin Corla, the core purpose of the legislation which is being debated here today is to allow the Minister for Transport, Tourism and Sport to increase the level of funding which can be made available to Fáilte Ireland, the National Tourism Development Authority, for the purpose of supporting enterprises and projects relating to the development of tourist facilities in the country. I welcome this legislation and also wish to commend the Minister and the Government for the steps they have taken already in promoting the tourism industry. Tourism, as we know, and speakers to it, is vital to the Irish economy and has indeed been identified by this Government as a key industry in leading our national recovery. Tourism is one of the strongest indigenous industries. The jobs created and supported by tourism cannot be transferred out of Ireland. It is not multinational in its character, nor is it geographically specific. Urban and more remote areas alike can benefit from tourism. Often it is the more remote areas, those bypassed by industrial and commercial development, and therefore remaining unspoiled, that have the greatest natural charm and draw and beauty to offer to our visitors. The value of tourism to our economy can easily be demonstrated. Tourism attracts both foreign and domestic revenue. It's an important employer, with 180,000 people employed in the sector. Many of these jobs are in geographically remote areas, for example along the western seaboard, and are vital to their local economies. Tourism is also a very important source of tax revenue. In 2007, for example, tourism contributed nearly $3 billion to the Exchequer, but unfortunately this has dropped to $1.3 billion in 2009. Ireland experienced unprecedented tourism growth in the 1990s, but since 2008 the industry has been in decline, with visitor numbers, total tourism revenue, government revenue and employment numbers all falling. The total number of overseas visitors peaked at 7.7 million in 2007, but declined year on year to reach 5.8 million in 2010. Visitor numbers from each of the three largest markets, Britain, mainland Europe and North America, have also declined year on year since 2007. As I mentioned already, the tax take from tourism has dropped by nearly 2/3 over the same period. The reasons for decline, the period of economic growth which saw our economy grow and allowed us to invest significantly in our tourism infrastructure, had the knock-on effect of raising prices and damaging Ireland's competitiveness. For example, a survey conducted by Fáilte Ireland showed that while in the year 2000, 68% of visitors felt that Ireland offered very good or good value for money, and this figure has fallen to just 28% in 2009. In addition to the competitiveness issue, the Tourism Action Plan Implementation Group identified in 2006 a concern that Ireland's tourism product had become somewhat tired, lacking in bounce and verve for many, many tourists. Some of the existing facilities do not seem to provide a compelling reason for visitors to come to Ireland. This weakness is borne out by the fact that in 2009, 40% of visitors to Ireland thought that the overall experience was either poor or very poor. The value and significance of tourism, Laskin Corla, to Irish jobs and the economy is huge, and the recent decline is therefore of major concern. This government has identified the tourism industry as one which can lead in Ireland's economic renewal, and I welcome the work that has been done to date. The programme for government makes a clear commitment to improving Ireland's tourism product and outlines measures which can boost visitor numbers from key markets. Recovery of our share of the British market has been identified as a key priority. and marketing strategies are being developed for emerging long-haul markets. The Jobs Initiative, unveiled in May of this year, further shows the government's commitment to boosting tourism. The cut in the VAT rate on services relating to tourism from 13.5% to 9% will help with competitiveness in the industry and create jobs. Also, I commend Minister Varadkar on his willingness to drop the €3 travel tax, coupled with his refusal to be held to ransom by the airlines. The removal of this tax will benefit the travel industry and has the potential to increase tourist traffic into Ireland. But this must be met and matched by the airlines, who must play their part in opening and reopening routes which will bring tourists to our shores. There is a continuing and strong rationale for making more funds available as per this bill for further investment in our tourism industry. And some of the reasons are, for example, the World Tourism Organization is forecasting that globally tourism will increase and has great potential for future growth. And indeed, travel to Northern Europe is forecast to grow by an average of 3.8% per annum. Tourism is a competitive industry, and we must not rest on our laurels. Competitor destinations, particularly in Northern Europe, are investing very substantial sums of public money in tourism. For example, in Scotland, the Highland and Islands Enterprise Agency spends up to 22 million annually on tourism, in addition to the 52 million spent yearly to support the Visit Scotland agency. There is no doubting the rationale behind continuing to invest in tourism, and for that reason this bill is very welcome. But it is essential that we invest wisely to maximise the benefit to our economy, and we must take on board the recommendations of Fáilte Ireland and other expert bodies. For too long, tourism policy has been accommodation-led. Build the hotels and the tourists will come. Indeed, the culture of cosy relationships between policymakers and property developers led to lax regulation and a subsequent saturation of the market with hotels. The drop in tourist numbers means that many hotels now stand empty for months each year, and many are indeed struggling to keep their doors open. There has been a growing realisation that in a competitive market, hotels alone cannot attract tourists to Ireland. It is worth noting that many of our competitors are investing in signature capital projects, iconic attractions, which can offer compelling reasons for visitors to choose a particular destination. For example, in Northern Ireland, huge investment is currently being made in two major symbolic attractions: the Giant's Causeway Visitor Centre and the Titanic Quarter development. In 2007, the Tourism Product Development Strategy, published by Fáilte Ireland, recognised that Irish tourism was at a critical point. After an audit of all tourist attractions, events and activities, the strategy concluded that less support should be provided for accommodation and more investment should be made in tourism products and events that will attract visitors and provide a stimulating and rewarding experience for them. More recent strategy documents have said that the stock of attractions need to be maintained and enhanced, and that progress is necessary in developing a select number of new attractions, as well as upgrading some of the major attractions. In my own constituency, Glasgow and Coyle, I've seen the value and success of amenity and attraction-led tourism through the development of three major tourism attractions in the Inchicore-Kilmainham area. This area has become a major focus for tourism in Dublin. Last year, as many as 100,000 visitors came to the Kilmainham-Inchicore area, mainly to see three big attractions: Kilmainham Jail, the Royal Hospital and the Memorial Park. 40 years ago, visitors to the Kilmainham-Inchicore area were rare. Kilmainham Jail was almost in ruins 60 years ago. Local people took the lead, took out their ladders and tools and commenced a campaign for restoration and recognition. They were joined by community leaders, and the actions and passion of the community forced the OPW and government of the day into saving this local icon. It's impossible now to imagine Dublin's historic landscape without it. And the same story was played out with the Royal Hospital and with the Memorial Park. We remember when cows grazed in the rooms of the Royal Hospital, and young men, youth, rallied cars across the lawns of Memorial Park. But local agitation last Concoila convinced local people, convinced of the authentic nature of these attractions, fought to have them conserved, and they are a very big success. In addition to these existing major attractions in the Kilmainham-Inchicore area, there are a number of other features in the district which have huge potential to drive tourism in the area, if properly developed. The Kilmainham-Inchicore area has the potential to be a real cultural tourism quarter in the city, something now recognised by Dublin City Council in its most recent development plan. Alongside the jail, the Royal Hospital and Memorial Park, I would now like to mention 3 additional sites in the Inchicore Kilmainham district that have massive cultural tourism potential. One of these, the old St. Michael's CPS, now vacant, was once part of Richmond Barracks in Inchicore. It was the scene of some of the pivotal events of the 1916 Rising. It was here that the penultimate act of the rebellion played out, where the leaders of the Rising were brought, held, screened, tried, and court-martialed and sentenced to death, and marched down Emmett Road to Kilmainham Jail. It was here that Pearse and the other leaders met their fate. And I would like to see this important historical site reinvigorated and restored in time for the centenary of the 1916 Rising. Indeed, the local heritage group have submitted a plan for the reinvigoration of this old barrack building to government and have received quite a positive reply. One of the greatest advantages, I want to mention the 2 other proposed projects in the Inchicore Kilmainham area relate to our industrial heritage. One of the greatest advantages Ireland has in attracting tourists is the rich heritage we have on this island. Ireland is renowned indeed, rightly so, for its cultural heritage, its music, its literary tradition, and the arts in general. However, one aspect of our heritage is consistently overlooked, and the field of human endeavour, that is our industrial heritage. Although we have the raw material, the historic legacy, this key part of our material culture is grossly neglected in Ireland, unlike many other countries. And action needs to be taken to recognise and celebrate great moments of inventiveness and genius in our industrial activity. For example, the harnessing of the force of flowing water to drive production process was best mastered in the Kilmainham-Inchicore area in the valley of the Camac. And the harnessing of steam to drive the great locomotives, it's the city's key legacy from the Industrial Revolution is the Inchicore Railway Works. The mill I mentioned in particular is one of Ireland's most important industrial sites. The last and best preserved example of the innovation of this period. It has been identified by the leading industrial archaeologists in this country as potentially the 3rd leg of a significant cultural tourism cluster, along with the Royal Hospital and the jail. Other countries don't so easily abandon the celebration of their industrial past. I visited, for example, an old industrial works in Brisbane, Australia, where visitors young and old learned and marvelled at their own industrial tradition. Indeed, when I spoke to some of the old men and they asked me where I was from, I said I was Irish. They said, well, you probably know about the Inchicore Railway Works, because these people knew what were the great railway works of Europe. And they were there, these were men that worked in the railway works, but were brought back by the local tourism body to demonstrate to children and adults and visitors just how pieces of ore, for example, like pieces of stone, could be turned into metal. And children queued and watched in awe as these men demonstrated their craft. Also at the same location, people could take simulated trips in old steam trains. They could look at the great craft that went into the making of these giant features of the Industrial Revolution. And I've also visited the old city of Porto in northern Portugal, a city which fully recognises its industrial past. The built fabric of this old industrial town, home of the port industry and many amazing examples of transport history, is protected now as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And Porto, not a typically tourist destination, now draws thousands and thousands of visitors to see the authentic legacy that this city bequeaths to the world and that is protected by UNESCO. And yet in Ireland, our monuments to the Industrial Revolution, like the Inchicore Railway Works, lie neglected. One of the speakers mentioned Locke's old distillery. That's a good example of our industrial heritage being conserved and retained. The discerning cultural tourist has an interest in all fields of human endeavour. Industrial attractions such as these that I've mentioned have an authentic tourism value, as evidenced by the experience elsewhere in the two places I mentioned. And we need to recognise this glaring deficit. We need to evoke and safeguard and celebrate our great industrial heritage and retain selected pieces of it in tangible forms. And in doing that, we are celebrating and evoking the great work and craft of ordinary people and, of course, the great inventors and engineers who were part and parcel of this great endeavour. I would be writing to the Minister for Tourism, Transport and Sport and the Minister for the Arts, Heritage and the Guild, asking them to look at the idea of commemorating our industrial heritage through developing an industrial heritage facility in the Inchicore Kilmainham district. And I firmly believe that this would be a great attraction, adding unique value to the Irish tourism product. Dublin City Council's development plan, Laskin Corla, for 2011-2017 envisages the creation of an urban cultural tourism quarter in the Inchicore Kilmainham area. With the combination of the attractions mentioned, those currently in operation and those in desperate need of restoration before they are lost, this area will have the city's largest and most diverse cluster of archaeological, architectural, political, cultural, ecclesiastical and social heritage sites in the city of Dublin. And the City Development Plan now recognises that and has written that in to one of its objectives. Furthermore, the development of this district as a hub of cultural tourism fulfills all the criteria for the sensible development of our tourism industry. I think it's exactly in alignment with what the reports are saying. Authentic products that have a universal appeal and real character as opposed to concocted character. Fáilte Ireland have clearly outlined the need to focus our tourism efforts on attractions which will increase tourist traffic and stimulate the industry. And by opening up this previously untapped aspect of our material heritage, I think we can do just that. This bill will allow for significant future investment in tourism, which, if deployed prudently, can help the industry play its part in our economic renewal. And I commend this bill to the Dáil. Pascal, can I take 1 minute? I have rarely spoken in the chamber. I often speak in committees and places, and I would like to take the opportunity to thank the people who have supported me for the last 25 years in local elections in Ballyfermot, Inchicore, Kilmainham, Chapel, and people of South Central who this time sent me here. I'd also like to evoke the name of Jim Kemmy, the Limerick socialist, who was a close friend of mine and who was the main influence on me in entering electoral politics. Thank you very much.